Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Good
Welcome
morning.
to the 5th annual Wild Wisconsin Winter Web Conference. I'm Jamie Machek with the Nicolet Federated Library System in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and helping me moderate the library leadership track is Megan Thays, my colleague here at Nicolet. We're glad you're able to listen in. So as I said, this is the library leadership track. We're going to be talking about competencies, ethics, coaching, and disciplining employees. This is not fun. It's not the flowery rainbow stuff necessarily, but I think it's important we do discuss these things. They're things that we need to talk about as library leaders. So we're glad to have you here today. Our presenter right now is Penny Talbert, and Penny is the Executive Director at the Ephrata Public Library in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, which is, I believe, somewhere between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. So Penny, whenever you are ready, please begin.
Okay. There's a large portion of Pennsylvania between Pittsburgh and Philly. We are closer to Philly, but we are in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Amish country, many people call it. So we are a small library, and that, I think, is the first thing that you have to realize as you are looking at this program. And if you hear that chewing in the background, that is not me. That is my dog, who is getting treats during this whole thing so that she doesn't make a big fuss while I'm doing this. So that's not me. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we did at our library to bring core competencies to all of our library staff. When I say all of the library staff, I actually mean all of the library staff, not just the librarians. And I don't want people to think that you need a huge library budget to do this or tons of resources, because that is certainly not the case for us. We are a very poorly funded library. We serve about 33,000 people, and our total public funding is less than $300,000. We have a $1 million budget, and so we raise about $700,000 in private funding. So as you can see, we have our work cut out for us. And in that framework, we were able to do this all with training in-house for the most part. So I guarantee you can do this because we are giving you all of our training materials to use. When we approach this, to begin, I basically looked from the patron side of the desk and started to really see that our staff wasn't able to answer all the questions that were coming to the desk, not because they didn't want to, but because they really were never trained to do those things. And at the time that we were doing it, I would say that a lot of those things were called reference work. Today, 5 years later, I would say a lot of those things are customer service. Honestly, a lot of the technical things that we were dealing with then have now just become a part of regular customer service work in the public library. And that change is, I think, even more fitting now as we're dealing with even identifying what is real on the web and what we're dealing with when our patrons are coming in and asking questions that maybe we haven't dealt with before. So it is a timely thing to be looking at for your staff right now. So the big question I think that a lot of us look at is, why would we want to take something like this on? It is defining a competency program and putting a competency program in place in a library, a technical competency program, is a huge undertaking. When you look at it from afar, to take your entire staff and define what it is that you want everyone to know, a baseline, coming up with a way to train them, following through with the training program, and then holding them accountable for those materials. That's a lot. And it is overwhelming. So I think what we've tried to do is really cut it down into bite-sized pieces, both in the implementation and the learning, and the measurements has made it doable for even the smallest staff. We have a staff of about 31 people, Many of those are very part-time. We have, I believe, 6 full-time employees, but most of them are under 20-hour-a-week part-time folks. So working around those kinds of schedules, some people that only work evenings, I feel your pain if that's what you're concerned about doing. The first thing we really did was introduce the staff to what transliteracy was and why it was important to what they were doing. So the basic framework is that transliteracy is our ability to read and write and interact across all these platforms that have been coming out and using the tools that are out there, not just on the web. And these are things that we as librarians and library workers already are interacting with. We just don't, I guess, recognize it a lot of times. So we are storytellers. We are people that are reading and writing all these different kinds of media. Here's a name that they can put to it now. And when I introduced this to staff, I really introduced it as an opportunity. Maybe like a lot of you, I had staff members who didn't have a personal email account or a home computer and didn't use email in their daily lives outside of work, and were not, I guess, comfortable, or it wasn't what they normally would do. And to start making them use email or start making them, you know, do some of their regular work duties in an online environment wasn't something that they saw the need for. And so they just didn't want to do it. And to convince them that this was going to be a great thing wasn't necessarily always easy. So we really tried to sell it as an opportunity for the staff. We were going to make their lives easier, and we were going to learn together. And it was going to be something that, as we moved forward, we weren't going to leave anyone behind. So it was a group learning experience from the beginning. And that's how we really presented it to them. And I believe that in public libraries, taking on challenges as an opportunity, it has always been beneficial in my library to do that. And we continue to use that as a way to take on challenges. And for competencies, it was a very good way to do it. We benefited from that in a big way, doing it that way. So you might ask yourself, how do you know if you need competencies? Maybe you think that your entire library staff is just fantastic and can answer every question that comes to them at the desk, and you just think this is a waste of time. Maybe you are in that situation. I was not. So in order to really see where we were to get a feed of where we needed to start, we did a lot of surveys, and we did them anonymously simply because I knew that if we had everybody put their names on it, maybe we weren't going to get the honest answers that we really needed to know where to start. So we asked basic questions in these surveys. What program do you need to open a PDF file? What's the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? Nobody knew the answer to that. And, you know, ask yourself, would you really be able to explain that? A lot of people ask, well, why would we need to explain that? There are reasons, because you may have to really get to that point with a patron depending on what they're trying to do. What are search engines? When we asked those questions to our staff, a lot of our staff members thought that Amazon was a search engine because that's where they went to search for things like what book is next in the series. And then things specific to your library or library system, like how long does a patron have as the default time limit for computer use? Or what's the name of the library's public wireless network if a patron comes in and wants to hook up with their computer? What are the name of common web browsers? These are all things that at the time my staff couldn't answer 100% of the time. I observed as a patron often. And we did have people doing secret shopping, coming up to the desk and asking questions so that I knew and my managers knew what kind of answers were being given and whether they were right or not. And these weren't being, this wasn't being done as a way to catch employees. Employees weren't told, oh, you answered this question wrong. This was just a way for us to find out what we needed to teach and where our limits were and where we needed to build in our educational components for these competencies that we were going to build for the staff. So staff knew that no one was getting in trouble. They knew that we were gathering information so we could build this list of competencies and provide training. And no one got upset because they were well aware of what we were doing, and they were actually submitting information that they needed help with. So it really was a group project to try to put this list together to start with so that everybody knew where we were going. And while there was some fear, hesitation about where we were going, they all knew what the goal was. And we didn't have a lot of pushback as far as putting together the original list. And when we were looking at all the things that had to go on this competency list, we looked at things like our library's website. How were patrons finding information on there? And when they were coming to the desk, was the staff able to find the information and guide patrons to that information on the phone? Because that's often very difficult. Our library's social media accounts, what information was available there and what should we add? On the OPAC, within our ILS system, all of the databases that we provided to patrons through the state, the system, the district, how to use them, what was available there, all the extra services that we provided. For instance, if we did a home delivery service, we check out Rokus to our patrons. Did everyone on staff know how to use those? So we began a program where before we launched services like that to the public, everybody that worked at the library took those things home and connected them to their televisions and learned how to use them. All the platforms for devices. So, someone would have an iPhone at work and everyone would be able to use it and know how to use that platform, for instance, for overdrive and things like that. They became versed on all the programs that were available on both the public and the staff PCs. So they had a basic baseline of all the things that patrons and staff would be exposed to. All of those items went onto that competency list. That seems incredibly overwhelming. And that's all the things that we built that original competency list from. So take a breath. That's really the hard part, to put that list together. That being said, that list was not handed out and overwhelmed everyone. That was just where the original team started to build the list. The next step after we built that list, of course, then we had to start getting buy-in from our stakeholders within the organization to explain what we were trying to do and how we were going to do it. And of course, public libraries, depending on how they are governed and formed, have lots of different stakeholders. We are an independent 501c3. So our stakeholders included our board of directors, our friends, our staff, our volunteers, donors, our local supporting government officials, our patrons, members of our community. They all heard about what was going on, and they wanted to know, why was this happening, and how was it going to benefit the community, and was it too much of a burden on the staff? So all of these things had to be explained, how it was going to benefit the community. And, I did presentations about these things, and I explained how other communities had used competencies to really increase service. And surprisingly, I didn't really have a huge pushback from any of these groups after it was explained to them how we were going to do it and that it was self-guided learning, but that there was going to be a lot of support. The staff was, of course, worried at first, but after they saw how we had set up the program, there was not worry. There was, of course, doubt that they'd be able to do it, but there wasn't as much fear as I actually thought there would be initially, which actually made me really, really happy. And I was very, very proud of them as they moved forward in the program. The thing that scared everyone, of course, was then the learner leave part that we added to it. And they knew this from the beginning. We decided that after the training, at the end of each year, there would be competency exams. Now, these exams, they found out after the first year of taking them, were comprehensive to the competency list that they received, but were very easy. If they did not score, it was the first year, if they didn't score an 80% or above, they were terminated. Now, nobody was terminated because they had all completed their competency list and did fine on the exam. But it is a part of the responsibility of their jobs to be able to learn these competencies and complete them. It is just like lots of other jobs where you have to know what you're doing in your trade and complete a certain number of tasks in order to do your job successfully, and that's what these competencies are. Before everybody freaks out, you are able to see all of our competencies in this slideshow. I do have the URL for our entire training program where you can download the list of competencies, and I'll review some of them later on in the slideshow so you can see they are very detailed and easy to follow.
Penny,
yes.
A few questions came in.
Sure.
What were the benefits to having some of these groups have buy-in to training? And were staff told that would be the end result of not getting at least 80%?
Yes, they were told that. And I'll start with the first one about the buy-in.
Okay.
I mean, we're a small town, and we are a huge part of our town. We're really the hub of the town. Like 80% of the people in our community have library cards and have used them in the last 3 years. So anything that happens in the library, everybody knows about. So to get that buy-in, I think saved us from a lot of backlash later when they hear, oh, the library is, doing this training for the staff and they're requiring them to do this and that. I wanted everybody to know what we were doing and why we were doing it ahead of time, and to know that we are really trying to maximize our resources and make sure that our staff is there to help our community. I wanted them to know that the reason we were doing it was so that we could better serve everyone who was using the library. And I think that really came through, and the community definitely saw the service advantage to that within, I'd say, 6 months of the training. As far as the learner leave part, yes, the staff knew that at the introduction of the program, but they also knew, and I think that, I was not new to the library. I'd been there for probably over a decade by that time. They knew that I was fair. They knew that I wasn't going to pull the rug out from underneath them. They were very familiar with the management team. They knew that when we told them, look, we're going to teach you this stuff. We're going to be there with you. You're not going into this blind. They had, they had like practice tests beforehand. They knew there wasn't going to be anything on there that was a surprise to them. So I don't think that anyone was worried that they were going to be tricked or anything. And it wasn't that they were scared of failing. They were more worried that they were going to like panic at the end. So what we did was we had 2 parts of the competency exam. Part of it was a demonstrative learning where they would actually sit down with myself and the assistant director, and we would say, okay, connect the laptop to the wireless network. Then, go to Overdrive and let's download this particular book onto this iPod. And they would, so they would demonstrate their skills to us. The other part was a online written part. So if they're bad at test taking, we made it available for all kinds, or we made it possible that if you were bad at test taking versus doing something hands-on, that it wasn't going to tank you on the exam. We wanted to make sure that every learning style was accounted for. So we really did work very hard to make sure that it was totally fair and that it wasn't, we didn't want them to just be regurgitating information. It was more about just showing your skills and your abilities. So I don't really think that it was a huge concern for them. They knew that it wasn't about really test taking, but more demonstrating their abilities. So,
awesome. Thank you, Penny.
Okay, sure. So we'll move on to quick tips for building your program. And I really did at this point feel like a construction worker because we really were building something. We didn't have at this point any model. I mean, I had seen lists of competencies before, but I had never seen an online program put together. So at the time, the state of Pennsylvania was doing a pilot project with LibGuides, and I was lucky enough to have been selected to be in the Train the Trainer program, so I got a free subscription for a year to LibGuides, and as all good librarians, when you get a free anything to anything, you exploit it like crazy. So I figured, hey, we're going to do it in LibGuides, which worked out really well for us. So my quick tips are, first of all, we all know as a librarian that you don't reinvent the wheel. So my LibGuide is still up and active, and I am giving you all permission to copy the whole darn thing. If you are a LibGuide subscriber, take the whole thing and put it on your LibGuide and change it and do whatever you want, and you've got your competency program pretty much set up. Make sure you include skills related to special services at your library. So if there are special things that you offer or doing at your library that I didn't have at mine, make sure that you add those to your competencies. Really pay special attention to the organization and record keeping. So if you are, for instance, keeping track of when employees are completing certain parts of your competencies, assign someone to record keeping. You can't have one person doing everything. This is a team effort. It doesn't have to be the director or assistant director doing the record keeping. It has to be somebody who is good at record keeping. Like I said, this is definitely a team effort. Competencies also have to be very flexible because look how much things change in libraries. Your competency list should probably change annually, if not more. I mean, changing it more probably isn't fair to your staff, so I think annually is probably how it should be done. And when you're assembling your team to do this, it's not about seniority, it's not about job status, it's about who's going to be best for your team. Oftentimes, the person on your team who is going to be most valuable to do the social media part may not necessarily be the person who is your IT manager. So you just have to look at who has those special transliterate skills because, you know, different skill sets may not show up in the job description. So I really paid attention to what people did online when they weren't at work. So, you know, and that's how I kind of picked who was going to do what. As we started to get ready, we started introducing online processes to the regular work week that had not been online before. So, for instance, we went to an online time clock, which doesn't seem like a huge deal, but we went from paper to online just to get them into the habit of the first thing you do when you come to work is clock in. You know, the cleaning guy never went online when he came to work before, but now all of a sudden that was part of his regular routine. The shelvers maybe never went online before, but that was now part of their regular routine. And it was also then, okay, well, while you're online, check your email. You know, some of my employees just didn't check their email. It wasn't something that they did. That was an excuse for them to check their computers every morning. We also train from a very basic level, making no assumptions, because it is not good at this point to make assumptions, because we want to make sure that they have all the groundwork. Everything had step-by-step handouts. We made videos. When you go to our LibGuide, I apologize in advance. We are not professional filmmakers. We are very bad filmmakers, but they are clever. I have to tell you that the staff at the library, they're very clever, but again, not professional filmmakers. I tried to get everybody on staff to keep a paper copy of their passwords, because I don't know, you would think that people would know to keep all their passwords together, but somehow they don't. And as you go through the competency steps, you do end up creating an awful lot of accounts with some of these like online services as you're trying out new stuff, and then you end up forgetting your password. So I tried to make sure everyone kept their passwords. They probably didn't, but it's nice to remind them every now and again. And I also tried to introduce things one at a time, because if it's a scary new tool, it can be overwhelming for someone who's not a regular online user. I really did want to not overwhelm the people who were already a little bit hesitant about technology, because there are those people that just are still hesitant about new stuff. And I always tried to say, like, if you're using a library computer, at least if you break it, you don't have to fix it. But we really don't want them to break stuff.
Penny, how many staff members did you have when you were implementing this?
I think it was 27 at the time.
Okay.
So pretty much what I have now.
Okay, thank you.
And these are some of the other ones that we incorporated. So the time clock that we incorporated was on the clock. It's relatively inexpensive. We've now upgraded to something else, but that served us well for several years. We have an internal wiki that we started that they had to, so we posted our weekly announcements there, and every week they had to comment that they'd read it. We also have we started putting all of our schedules on there, so if they wanted to know when they were working, they had to go there. That became our centralized communication place, so no more bulletin boards, no more notes hanging on the fridge in the staff room. Everything is there on the wiki, so it is now their digital staff room. If they want to know something, they've got to use it. So departmental wikis, so the youth services department has their own wiki where they can keep all of their things, trying to get everything digital so that they're used to using it. Asana, which is a to-do app, but also can be used to assign tasks. Dropbox has, we use Dropbox for pretty much everything at this point. Some people use Google Docs. I'm not a big fan. Doodle, I know with some of the other boards that I sit on, that's a good way to introduce the beauty of tech. So those were some of the things that I started to use to just try to incorporate tech into work weeks and get people a little bit more comfortable with using it. Even some of this stuff was difficult for some of the staff to get used to. So it was just starting to incorporate these things into the regular work week and have them become comfortable with it, while then introducing the LibGuide. It just became more normal to have tech be part of your everyday life. And and just become more comfortable with it. So at that point, we had to start doing the paperwork to really make competencies part of our organization for the long term. We included competencies into the library's strategic plan, including the learner leave part, including the importance it is for the organization, including the staff training piece. We included it in our procedure manual. We created an employee learning and growth program. We adopted the guidelines defining successful completion of the competencies as part of your job. So you had to successfully complete the annual competency training to have your job. And then we also included social media policies into that staff manual in order to, kind of wrap it all up, protect the library, protect the staff, and all of those things. So by putting all of those things in writing, we reinforced how important those competencies were to the organization and how important that customer service piece was to the board and to management and to everything that our library did. So the staff understood, our funders understood, our patrons understood that that's what we wanted to be. We wanted to be a place where people could come and get their technology questions answered. As you can understand, anyone who works with these things, this did not happen overnight. This is not a quick thing. This probably, I'm going to say, took probably close to 9 months for me to get all this stuff written and approved and, through the board and all of those things. So it took place while we were drafting the original competency list. So we developed the competencies. We got together our design team. We created our training and testing timeline, and that, depending on how aggressive you are, depending on your resources, depending on how much time you have, that's going to dictate that. There's no right or wrong answer to that. We introduced our staff to the big idea, and we really did what we could to alleviate fears for the staff. I think we did a good job of that. And then we really looked at content and delivery. So we looked at questions like, who's going to be the lead on the project? Who's going to contribute? What kind of time do we have? Who has the knowledge and skill set to act as a mentor to the staff? And who has the time to do that as well? Are we looking at all the different kinds of learning styles that we have within the organization? How are we going to deliver this info? Who's going to monitor it? And how are we going to record it? Because those are all things that if we don't do those things, this is just useless. You can have a great program and it can be up there on the web, and if nobody's going to use it, it's just a great program. So we wanted to make sure that the follow-through was going to be there if we were going to send all of these employees to do this program. Now, just as a frame of reference, we had, I believe, 4 people, including myself, who worked kind of as the management of the program when it was going on, and we took the different weeks and divided them up among the 4 people. So maybe once a month I would be monitoring a topic. 1 week out of the month I would be monitoring the LibGuide during that week. It wasn't horrible. When you're picking a delivery method, so again, we use LibGuides, but make sure that you're able to use several techniques and platforms as you're looking for how the whole thing is going to be delivered. And again, take into account learning styles. We tried to offer, the ability to do videos, and we wanted to have quizzes and polls and all kinds of things, so it would be kept interesting. We wanted to allow for feedback and discussion and the ability to submit files back to whoever was running it that week. And we wanted it to be really easy to navigate, because there's nothing worse than having your navigation get in the way of your learning. that's the worst. So we wanted to make sure that they could easily get through it. So this is the LibGuide URL, and you are welcome to go play with that. And again, you are also more than welcome to take that LibGuide and copy it onto your LibGuide account and use it as you would like. There are other LibGuides that are linked to this one with more tech information. You do have my permission to copy whichever ones you would like. And this is also available, my whole PowerPoint is also available for you to download through the conference site, so you don't have to scroll it down real quick. As we move through to the Get Competent part, we really encourage them to do self-directed learning. Through webinars and conferences, we held in-service days. We always had some kind of like little 10-minute, 15-minute instruction during staff meetings, and we often asked staff members to do that instruction. Like if they learned something interesting or, you know, during their self-directed learning, they could come and share it at a staff meeting. We do like to play games. My assistant director is the queen of Minute to Win It, and she always comes up with great games for them to play that actually go back to the competencies. Like we had Competency Family Feud, all kinds of great games. We encourage staff to attend the computer classes that are taught at our library. We actually pay them to do that, just like they're at work. We did have universal class that they could attend classes. Pennsylvania offers free SkillSoft classes for library employees, and also, of course, Web Junction, encouraging them to do that. And then the measuring their learning, they did the written and the demonstrative competency exam. They had lots of competency practice, and I'm a big fan of surveys. I'm not surveying them to get them in trouble, often not even looking for their names. I just want feedback to see how they're doing, and I often ask them as how I'm doing as well, because I want to make sure they have what they need. So, you know, we've really tried to make the staff understand that this is basically for the patrons, and training them is basically to help the patrons, and it's not to get them in trouble. So
Penny?
Yes.
2 quick questions, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take to implement this program? And maybe you're going to mention that later, but I thought I would ask it now.
Okay. From the time like we decided to start it until the time we launched the LibGuide, it was about 8 months. And then from the time we launched the LibGuide until we did the first test, it was about a year.
Okay.
But you know, we are very short-staffed, and we are short on time. So I did really take my time because I didn't want to rush it.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about staff who had difficulties or were reluctant, or are you going to be covering that?
I can actually talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
They teamed up. It was interesting. They kind of organically found the people that were kind of on their same skill level, and then someone else would kind of go into their group and lead them. And it wasn't that they were assigned to groups. They just kind of found their own groups and worked through it together. We had, at our staff meetings, we had an anonymous submission form that they could submit questions every month for the staff meeting, and then we would answer the questions to everybody, and that would usually open up more questions. So there was a constant feedback between the staff and management, so they always had the ability to ask anonymous questions and get anonymous answers through the wiki. But then they huddled up in these groups, and it was actually pretty amazing how it happened, and would work together on assignments, and just it was like they taught each other. It worked out very, very well, but they alleviated their own fears. I never had like a group or even one person come and say, we can't do this. And it seemed as they worked in those small groups, they empowered each other and gave each other confidence. So it wasn't like, you know, the week before the exam that everyone at that point was freaking out. They built up their confidence together. It was truly amazing. And by the time the exams came up, they were kind of high-fiving each other and, hey, you can do it. And there wasn't a lot of freaking out at the end. There really wasn't. I don't think anybody walked in there thinking they were going to fail.
Okay.
And they all,
Great.
I mean, they all scored in the 90%. So I don't think it was even close that anyone was going to fail because they knew what they were doing by that point. I think they were all overly trained, which, you know, is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, there was definitely such a change in confidence level. I mean, they for the most part, there was no longer that like hesitation when looking for a resource, because it was mostly at that point that they just weren't sure which resource to go to, and this seemed to alleviate that hesitation. Like, am I really looking at the right place? It got rid of that hesitation, I think, in a lot of ways, or introduced them to the resources that they just didn't know we had before, and as soon as they found out we had it, they were fine. So I just think it was that basic, you know, kind of, well, I didn't go to library school, so I'm not sure. Well, now it was like a boot camp library school for those who never had the opportunity to go. At this point now, though, like I said, I feel more like it's a customer service for librarians in general.
Thank you.
So here's a quick timeline for you, if you're quick like this. This is basically what we did in year one. And you're looking going, oh, well, she didn't talk about her in-service. All that stuff is either on the LibGuide or on my personal website. And even the surveys that we did are available for you. So you don't even have to make up the new surveys if you don't want to. You can just go to that site and download the surveys. The 23 things that we did, all of those things are available on the LibGuide. If you don't, like for instance, if you have Overdrive, you can just copy my Overdrive ones. If you don't have it, you can delete that and add your own. We did a 19-week thing, 19-week program for 23 things, but you can make that 23 weeks. You can make that 46 weeks. You can kind of tailor it to whatever you're available to do, you know, whatever you have available for your particular library. Whatever your budget supports, whatever your staff supports, it's up to you, which is really kind of nice. But again, I really encourage you, as you go along with this, just survey, survey, survey. Because after you do this, the first kind of big competency training, don't forget, you're going to be bringing people on into your organization for years to come. And what we did was then we did a new staff member competency training thing that they go through this whole program on their own when they're hired. So if you keep that survey going, you'll be able to kind of change the program with those comments for new employees that come in after the initial training and make it better as life moves on. We also did a book discussion group with the staff after the initial training. They really loved that, where they did online discussion questions. They really enjoyed working on the soft skills there. And we actually then the next year did a reference 23 things as further competency training, which they liked as well. It encouraged us also to kind of change our culture, where we really started encouraging learning as a kind of feedback from the staff. So we have a telework policy now for staff that are able to do that. We have paid learning time for the staff. We have additional educational opportunities that are now offered to staff. And we have increased the required CEUs for every level of employee beyond what the state has required, because we feel like it has made such a difference for our employees and for our level of service to our patrons that it is worth it for us. We have seen an increase in donations that I believe we can tie directly to better service because of these competencies. So it is an investment worth making, I believe. And we've seen that now over the years. We've had enough years since the training that it's definitely, I can definitely tie it to the service that we're seeing from staff to the public. We've assigned lots of group projects, I think, that have worked really well. We promote we have staff-only social funds and events that we've been doing that have really helped encourage collaboration among the staff. I don't know if all library staffs are like this, but this library staff really likes collaboration. We've started encouraging staff to participate in community organizations as representatives for the library. So we have staff members who are representing the library on the Lions Club and in different community organizations, and that has really paid off because they're going in there as kind of experts for the library and consulting when they're in those community organizations, and it pays off not only in donations but in other ways back to the library. And they're going in there and really kind of being consultants on our behalf. So while we're remembering the mission, and we're really concentrating now on this new collaboration, this collaborative kind of culture that we've created, these are questions that I ask staff a lot as we kind of move through this new culture. The most interesting one, though, is how do you prefer to communicate? As we've kind of moved more into this online world, I'm really amazed. I have a board president right now who prefers to communicate by text message, which is very new to me. I have staff members who just want to text with me. It's weird for me because I don't text, but it has actually taught me a lot about as we move into competence. As we moved into these competencies, I've learned a lot about how some of the staff members are way more productive using different forms of technology versus other things, and it has improved our productivity now that I know those things. So you may learn a lot about your staff as well as them learning too. So that's a heads up and maybe a warning if you dislike text messaging as much as I do. We'll see. So to start your competency list, just start listing everything I talked about at the beginning, and in a couple of weeks get back to me and tell me how many pages you have, because it is really daunting at first. But after you have that stuff all listed, then you start grouping it, and it's not nearly as overwhelming as you may think. I wanted to give you an example of just, this is one page from my original competency list. So at the top, it says, understand the basic hardware and common peripheral components of a computer. That would be the competency. The second column would be the demonstrable skills and knowledge. So all of those things would demonstrate how you understand the competency. And then on the right-hand side, that would be how you learn those things. So every competency has the skill and knowledge and how you would go about getting that training. So there is no competency that doesn't give you a skill. This is how you would demonstrate that you know this. This is how you would demonstrate that knowledge. And this is exactly where you would go to gain that knowledge. So we've really laid it out I think, very clearly for them. And then if they still didn't understand it, then they could go to one of the managers and we would make time for them and sit down and go through it even more for them. Beyond that, there were always open training courses if they still didn't understand something beyond that. So it might seem very overwhelming, but when you really drill down and look at it, it's really not that overwhelming. Again, we taught in bite-sized pieces because in the big picture it's huge. But as you start looking line by line, it's not so huge. So if you are going to present this to your staff, I would really recommend talking about the idea and really giving them a broad view of it before you hand out your competency list. And then really going over maybe page 1 and saying this is how it works before handing them it home and scaring the bejesus out of them. Because that's what it'll do. Yeah.
Penny, I just want to let you know we have about 15 minutes left and some questions have come in.
Yeah, I'm going to just show you a couple of pictures of us having fun now. And then I'll take your questions. So, and then this is what happens when you're not doing competencies. You play kickball and stuff. So like I said, we do have a lot of fun. I don't want you to think I just make them sit in a room all day and learn competencies. We do actually have a lot of fun. And here we are having fun. I made them pose for these so you'd actually, down here you'll see we did have a bowling team. We're not very good. We look a lot better than we are. And here is my contact info. Should you need it. My website is pennytalbert.com. You can find more competency-related stuff on there. And then there is the LibGuide. Again, copy away. And now I will take some questions.
Awesome. Someone asked, how did you, so you gave the staff time to work on this training and these assignments. So how did you manage the workflows around these training schedules?
We gave them extra time beyond their scheduled hours. So everyone, while we were doing the training, everyone got an additional 2 hours of work time a week that we budgeted that year to work on competencies.
Okay, awesome. What type of follow-up is done on the self-directed learning to verify that each person is actually getting something from the time spent and also that that actually followed through with the tasks?
Every time, every week when they do self-directed learning, there's a little form that they go onto the wiki and they fill out what they did and what they learned, and that just comes to me and I read over it. And then at the end of the year on their annual competency exam, they have to do a little synopsis of what they accomplished with their self-directed learning, and then they also have to give us a pretty, I'm not going to say extensive, but pretty extensive synopsis of what they are doing throughout the year on a regular basis to keep current. There went the dog. To keep current with what's happening in technology, particularly in libraries throughout the year. So where they are going each week to get their news or watching the trends and things like that throughout the year. So that is something we look at on a weekly basis and then in their annual competency exam as well.
Great. Have you had an employee who may have diminishing skills? I'm thinking about an older employee we have that is seeming to lose some skills year to year, even though she still takes classes.
I mean, yes. Or if they're able to pass the competency exams, that shouldn't be a problem. But if they're not able to do their job, I believe that that probably could be a problem then, but I haven't had anyone who hasn't passed the exams.
Okay. Were there pay increases for meeting the competency?
Oh, if only there were pay increases for anything. We haven't had pay increases in a very long time. So if there were, I think that would probably be a deciding factor. But we don't have those things in Pennsylvania.
You mentioned that they get the opportunity to be part of some organizations. So how did you get them interested in being part of some of those organizations?
Well, we offer to pay it. So, like, oftentimes it'll be like, oh, I would love to be involved in the Lions Club, and then we say, oh, well, now we'll pay your membership, and we'll pay for, you know, your meal when you go to the meetings. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that's what was standing in their way of going to begin with. So then they'll do it if if it doesn't cost them anything and they're representing the library, they're happy to do it normally. But we don't force anybody. It's their personal interest. If they want to do it, then we will cover their costs. And it's one less thing I have to go to.
Yeah. So again, how long has the program been in place? And in all those years, how many people have failed the competency exam?
5 years, one person.
Which you mentioned that at the conference I attended where I saw you, and I found that was pretty astounding and pretty amazing. I think the audience was surprised to hear that too.
Yeah.
So
I'm surprised every year.
But I think as you know, when we first hear about this, we're a little surprised, but then when you talk about all the training opportunities they get and how they can team up and just how it's not like you're saying you have to learn this and we're not going to help you. You know, you're giving them staff time, you're giving them training opportunities, you know, so they should be ready.
Well, and everybody that works the public service desk at a library, they want to help our patrons. The last thing they want to do is not be able to answer a question. All we're doing is giving them the tools to do what they want to do.
Do staff get a chance to repeat the exam if they fail, or is it a one and done?
It's once and done.
Okay. And the one person who failed, he or she was terminated?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I'm really not a mean person.
No, I don't think anyone is thinking that. We're just about out of time. So what we've been asking all of our presenters for the conference, Penny, is why do you do what you do? What made you want to become? You kind of have an interesting path to librarianship. So why?
Yeah, I didn't want to be a librarian.
Why do you keep doing it?
Yeah, I ask myself that all the time. I actually, and I'm an accidental librarian. I fell in love with the library I am in. I honestly don't know. I really do ask myself. I love helping these people where I live. I've never worked in another library in my life, so all I know is where I am. But I love my community, and I see what difference. I see the difference that this little library makes in this community, and I cannot imagine what the community would be without it. And that's why I do it. That's why I go to work every day, because I see the difference.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Penny, for a great session. As mentioned, this recording and her slides will be posted up on our conference website later today. Our next session in this track, in the library leadership track, is with Marge Locke-Waters. And she's going to talk about creating an ethical work environment, and that's going to be at 1 o'clock. So you have a little time to grab some lunch, check your email, take a walk, get rested. We hope to see you at the next couple sessions, and if not, we hope you have a great rest of your day. So long.